Lawn Solutions Australia is bringing the world's leading turf varieties to both your local golf course and home lawn. With superior turf varieties like Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda, Sir Grange Zoysia, and the newly launched Zoysia Australis, available exclusively through Lawn Solutions Australia, we have the perfect lawn for you. For more information or to find your local accredited supplier, visit lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid, so it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 80 of Playing from the Tips, which also happens to be our special Solheim Cup edition of the preview and tipping show presented by Golf Australia magazine, covering all corners of the professional golf world. I'm Jimmy Emanuel and I'll be attempting to guide proceedings as we focus in on Virginia and the best women from the United States taking on Europe, as well as keeping up on all the action from LIV Golf, the DP World Tour at one of the world's greatest venues, and the PGA Tour back to it after something of a break in California. All that action sounds like a lot to get through, and it is. So, to do the heavy lifting, given Adrian Logue is once again gallivanting around the globe somewhere, former newspaperman turned think piece specialist and podcast studio magnate, Rod Morrie. Rod, welcome to your own studio again.
Thank you, mate. You must be running out of nice things to say or things that sound impressive intros for me. I need to take a week off to give you a break.
Yeah, that's true. I think we could all do with some time off for me to just refresh some things to call people.
It has been hectic. It's been a hectic golf year. Hectic. Like
it has.
There's no more golf, but it just feels really hectic this year. It's just moved at such a pace and constant, yeah.
There's so many different elements, and that pushes us on to last week, which we talk about now, is it's a quiet week, but it doesn't get quiet. Matt Wallace goes and wins for the first time, creates a great story. Trav Smythe nearly wins in Asia and has one of the best 9-hole stretches you've ever seen. It never stops.
Yeah, and what you missed there in the highlights, Wai Yang winning, which is fantastic, but in a playoff over Bernhard Langer.
Yeah.
Is he the most extraordinary golfer on the planet, Bernhard Langer? What is he, 66 now, 67?
Yeah, I think so.
He's got to be getting up there. He lost in extraordinary. So we don't watch the Champions too much, and even with Langer doing what he does, I suppose we don't watch it much. But it is incredibly impressive. It's a shame because it's extraordinary what he's doing. Anyway.
It is, yeah. It's unlike anything else in sport, realistically, and also in those highlights that we've quickly gone through. Quinn Croker won the Queensland Amateur, and as far as all records show, he's the first to win the Queensland Amateur and Australian Amateur in the same year in 89 years.
Oh, wow. Great effort. Well done, Quinn Croker. Yeah. Good effort.
So a seriously impressive player. Won the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia Future Tour Order of Merit. He nearly won on tour. He's been, he struggled last year in the middle of the year when he went over to the UK, I think, and played a bit of golf. Found, probably more suited to America. Will turn pro at some stage, like they all do in this space, but seriously impressive stuff.
Hard to garner any attention at that level. We've got so many good players and so many potential really good players about to emerge from Australia, but we don't hear much about them because there's just so much other golf on. So Quinn Croker is definitely a name to remember. Really good player.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that little quiet week, we're going to move into an exceptionally hectic week. So before we do, we're going to take our one top 10 from last week and go to 118 for the year. We'll quietly do that. We've also got 19 wins. Those are, of course, the best golf tipping podcast numbers north of the Harbour Bridge and south of the Spit Bridge.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. Yeah.
Good.
Well done. Yeah,
People familiar with Sydney will know that, but anyone else, it sounds very impressive, and it is.
I was looking off into the skies. I thought about that and tried to map it in my head geographically. And you're absolutely right, Jimmy. There's no competition, mate. That's us.
Yeah.
We're out there.
And maybe south of the Brooklyn Bridge as well. We don't want to be Yeah, it's
there might be someone lurking at Hornsby, but we don't know of them at this stage.
We're not sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's get on with it.
Let's get into this week, and the Solheim Cup is a bit of a strange one this year. So to return to a regular cadence in off years of the Ryder Cup, Suzanne Pedersen and Stacey Lewis come back as captains after Europe won for the third straight time last year in Spain. So it hasn't probably had the lead up and the time to sort of settle, but Rod, you're going to tell us a little bit about it, and particularly probably Robert Trent Jones Golf Club in Virginia.
Yeah, well, obviously it'll be an important part of the equation. The golf course always is much more so in match play than what you see in stroke play, sort of potentially. But of course, you said that they won. Of course, Europe retained the cup, first tie in the Solheim Cup. People forget, but if you want to get fired up for this week, go back and have a look at some of the videos of what some of the players said at the time. They were ropeable, the Americans, at the notion that, oh, we've got to change the system, we've got to do this and that. All of that adds to it. We said at the time, what this does is create great stories. This is what the Ryder Cup lives on, these great stories of close calls and the ties that shouldn't have been and the putts that just missed and the putts that just made. That's why this event, and in fact the Solheim Cup has probably been the best of the cup events the last couple of years, I reckon. The worst results in these things is when there's a blowout. So when the Americans blow out and beat the Europeans, or the Europeans blow out, they're really quite uninteresting. These tend to be pretty close to Solheim Cup. Like the Ryder Cup, Americans are stronger on paper. Doesn't always get reflected on grass. That's 3 in a row, as you said, or 2 wins and a retain the cup for Europe, which is fairly impressive if you have a look at the difference between the world rankings of the teams, the players on paper. Amazing. But like the Ryder Cup, maybe it's a cultural thing, Jimmy. It always feels like there's a bit less team cohesion on the US side and more on the European side. That whole notion of a team of stars versus a star team, I think that we tend to see that with this. The best players on the American teams historically haven't really stood out in the Ryder Cup. Tiger Woods' Ryder Cup record is not amazing. It's hard for them to stand out in that term. Nelly Korda's a bit the same. The record's not as impressive as you'd think for a player of her ability. So it's a different event that does different things to people. That's what makes it interesting. So the two teams, probably a few unknown or lesser known players on the European team. Their world ranking players go well. I think their average world ranking is in the 40s. I think it's in the 20s for the US team. So there's a real imbalance there in terms of sort of form and whatnot. The course, as you mentioned, there's the Robert Trent Jones Golf Club, only built in 1991, I think, hosted the first 4 Presidents' Cups on US soil.
Yeah, that's right.
So
it was
no stranger
kind
to
of like purpose-built. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, and will probably always be remembered as just another venue of Fred Couples' highlight reels. If you can't have a look, if you search the course on President's Cup, there's just video after video of Fred chipping in, giving it the fist pump. The glory days of Fred Couples. Some of our younger listeners won't remember those, Jimmy, but well worth going to have a look. That was the great days of golf when Freddie Couples was giving it the fist pump. Look, it's kind of the course is kind of what you'd expect, which sounds like I'm being disparaging. I'm not. It's a good golf course. It'll produce good golf. It's interesting golf. Robert Trent Jones, of course, somewhat controversial, I suppose, as a course designer. Lots of the golf architecture nerds don't particularly like Robert Trent Jones, but lots of public golfers go and love playing his golf courses.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be beautifully presented. Look, it's not without interest and challenge and risk-reward holes, so there'll be some good golf to be played. It's around Lake Manassas, and the back nine in particular, a lot of the holes play along the shore. So quite spectacular visually. This will be a really good visual Solheim Cup, I think. The 2 holes will probably get a lot of attention. 2 par 3s, the 9th and the 11th. Kind of same sort of setup, 3 sides of water around the green. But depending where they put the flags, and this will really be what will be the key this week, I think, is the course setup. The pins on this golf course can go in some diabolical places. If you put it in the back left corner of that 9th hole, the par 3 down the hill, it's only 1.5 bounces from the water if you want to get it anywhere near the flag. Put it on the front, it's a much easier shot. It's probably a 9-iron or a wedge for these players. So look, the course setup will be critical. I imagine they'll set it up to try and get some sort of interesting golf. Apart from that, look, the 18th hole gets a lot of attention here at Robert Trent Jones. We probably won't see it very often. Historically in match play,
much at all, I'd say.
Anything after the 16th green is generally, there's no point putting up grandstands because there's not going to be a lot of action there, generally speaking. So look, I think, Jimmy, as I said at the start, this is going to be a great week as long as it's close. The worst possible outcome in this is one team or other just, romping away with it. We want to see good sort of head-to-head play. I always like the format, the 4-ball, the foursomes, then the singles at the end. Look, it's the event this week. we'll talk about the Irish Open a bit later. It's being played at Royal County Down, which is enormous excitement in the golf world. I've never seen Royal County Down. We couldn't go there when we went to Ireland in 97. There was issues about the marching season and taking a car with certain plates over the border and those kinds of stuff. So we couldn't get up to Northern Ireland. It was the one thing I was really disappointed. So I'm aching to watch it this week, but this will be the event that has all of my attention. Key players, I'm sure you've got a couple of key players picked out. How do you want to do that? Do you want to go first or?
No, you go.
Okay.
You go for your life. You go ahead.
So all the players obviously are important. There's 12 on the team. They all need to perform. But you do get in these things. With a team room, it's a different vibe for golf. There can be an impact. You look at Ian Poulter, never the best player on the Ryder Cup statistically, but always the best player at the Ryder Cup because he lived for the event. So to me, the key players, Europe will be Leona Maguire and Charlie Hull. Leona has had a pretty ordinary year by her standards, but she's proved herself to be a real Solheim Cup stalwart. She loves the competition. Her first year in 21, I think. Well, yeah, 2021. She was amazing. Just an extraordinary performance. If she plays well, and she's one that I think form coming in probably is not such an indicator. She'll get to the venue, get to the format, and she'll lift. She'll be key. And the other one, Charlie Hull. Charlie can be hot and cold. At the moment, she really seems to be in a really good period of her career. She's been playing some really good golf. If that Charlie turns up, that'll be really key for Europe. If she's a bit off her game, she can be she can get the slumped shoulders and all of those sorts of things. So we'd hope not this week, but she could really be the game changer because if Charlie gets going, gets on a roll, the crowd gets behind her, she's one of those players who can really sort of turn it. So they're for me for the two for the European team. Do you want me to do the US or do you want to have a...
No, I'll give my Europe thoughts. I completely agree with Charlie Hull. I think she holds a real key this year. She's always been one of the leaders because she can sort of rally them and get them going. But I think this year she's even more important. But I think Esther Henseleit is a really, really key player this year. She's been a star so far without going over the top, sort of with her individual performances. So I think she's going to be almost the Leona Maguire from a couple of years ago. That real key figure. She's going to play a lot. She's going to really be important. She's going to hold up her end and get at worst a half. And then the other one that's always important in this is Carlotta Singanda, who is the sort of the fire. She is the Poulter. She's based off personal performances and everything like that. You'd look at her and go, well, how's she get a spot here? And then by the end of the week, you'll think Europe can't play without her ever. So I think she holds that real key, and she was very, very important last time around in that tie.
Yeah, absolutely. Who'd she beat in the singles? Was it Nelly she beat in the singles? Carl, I think, beat Nelly Coulter, which is pretty. I agree. Yeah, there'll always be. You mentioned Leona there, and I mentioned her in 21. There's always one player who comes out that week and surprises everybody with an extraordinary performance. I think Esther Henseleit's a good tip to perhaps be that player this week, certainly for the European team. Bronze at the Olympics, Henseleit? Yeah, bronze, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. Correct.
So, which is pretty impressive. So that'll be good. The US side, as I said, always stronger on paper. That's true again this week. But there's an X factor for them this week, I think. The US problem in these team competitions has always been that team cohesion thing. They are a group of individuals. They tend to find it harder to come together and have that team thing. That won't be such a problem this week because it's Lexi's last Solheim Cup, Lexi Thompson. She's been stalwart. She's been playing. 2013 was her first Solheim Cup. She's been such a giant figure in the game. We forget, what is she, mid-20s, 28, something like that, 27?
28, yeah.
She's been a celebrity since she was 13. I remember watching her as a 15-year-old playing in Australia at the Australian Women's Open. It's just an extraordinary talent. So with her career coming to an end, she's going to stop playing full-time at the end of this year. There'll be a real vibe in that room, I think. They will want to do it for Lexi Thompson, and that'll probably be actually quite good for Nelly Coulter because much of the attention will probably come off her within the team room, and Lexi will take. So I think that's really important. And the other one that I really think could be important is Ali Ewing. I expect Ali Ewing's Solheim Cup record to be win, 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 win. She's that kind of player, a real bulldog.
Yep.
Looks like she's really, but Danielle Kang loves the head-to-head idea. Her Solheim Cup record's actually pretty poor. If she can have a good one this year, she's another who could really drive that in the team room, that attitude. That behind-the-scenes stuff we don't see is crucial in these weeks. You know, if you're having a good week in the team room and you've got some good cheerleaders and team players, it can really have a difference. And I think Ali Ewing could be that for the US. Having said that, you can make a case for all 12 players on each side being the key player. They're all going to have – there's nowhere to hide in a cup. They're all going to have to step up at some point and do something. So for me, those two, and it's less about the play and the players themselves, and more about the vibe that they're bringing, which is kind of what sets the tone for this week. And then whoever holds the most putts tends to take home the cup. So
I think Nelly Korda is fascinating this week. The year has been, without question, two distinct halves. There's just been, this could be the best golf we've ever seen played, to missing cuts in majors and doing all sorts of stuff. So I think it's going to be quite a remarkable thing to watch her play in the US. She'll have a huge amount of support, but she's another one that's maybe struggled to find her way in this sort of golf, which I think the best players of a generation do. It's not a natural fit. It's not for the person who takes delight in going out week in, week out, beating everyone else's brains in, to suddenly be
That's right. Now
conjoined in an idea of what you're trying to do. So it'll be interesting to see with how her profile and her play has grown in the last 12 months, how she'll flow into the team element. So I think Nelly's the absolute key. But the one I'm really keen to watch is Lauren Coughlin. Yeah, she's had a remarkable win, remarkable year, a win as well, and she just seems like the kind of player that could be that real gritty underdog for a US team. I don't expect she's going to play on a whole lot of Solheim Cup teams.
No,
she might play on one, but she might have that performance that people still talk about from a long time before and say, hey, you remember when that player came in, made her one team and just dominated. So I think she could really be that player this year.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. That's she's a bit of the Esther Henselite in some ways.
Yeah,
deeper into her career, but you're right. You don't know how many chances you might get. It doesn't look like she's going to be a consistent world top 10 player, so there's no guaranteed Solheim. No. There's a lot to play for this week, and the players really do get into it. The thing that sets these cups apart, and you don't want to try and cheer this on, but there's got to be genuine feeling. And you get that in the Solheim Cup. You rarely see that in women's golf, probably a bit less than men's golf. But a little bit of ill feeling and a little bit of niggle is what makes cups. The 14-all tie last time around was fantastic. We talked about that for days. It was wonderful, and people got worked up and upset about it. But it's when you get the genuine competitive ill feeling between people, that's when you get great golf. And I suspect that some of the personalities we've got on both of these teams, and Charlie Hull's not one to take it back a step. If her and Ali Ewing decided to have a frank and open exchange of ideas, I think it would be both frank and open. That's what you want to watch. That's what you want to spectate. So that's what I'm hoping we'll get this week. So
absolutely. And in terms of hoping, who are you putting your money behind?
Look, as anybody who's followed any of my tips will know, A, I don't know anything that I'm talking about and nothing about the game clearly, but B, I like to cheer for the story. I think the story would be another European win. I just think this time around the Lexi factor might just swing it for the US team. There's a lot of inexperience on the European team as well, so that can always go either. But I think the US will get it done this time. Normally I would pick Europe, but I think the US are going to win this week.
I tend to agree. I think there's a lot of emotional elements, but there's also a great amount of advantage playing at home this time around. It's going to be pretty hostile, I'd say, and three times holding on to the cup is a lot. If something has to give, and typically it's that run through, and it might even be a Segunda or something that has been around maybe one too long and doesn't get it done. Yeah. That's those things can happen too. So I'm on USA as well. And without him, we bring back who would Logue pick? And the answer is so clear here. Logue picks Ty because he's an agent of chaos.
Oh, he is too. Good call. He probably picked it last time as well.
Yeah, he just goes straight to the nastiest little result that nobody wants, but everyone kind of wants. So,
just for the listeners, he comes across quite pleasant and jovial.
Yeah.
To show. Awful person, like genuinely awful person. Yeah, if you were stuck in the room with him, you'd be absolutely. So don't fall for the shtick.
Exactly.
Want to work less and play more golf? Well, you can. If you're practicing your putting or your drives, Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda, exclusively by Lawn Solutions Australia, can bring the golf course experience right to your home. With superior drought tolerance, speedy recovery and toughness, Tiff Tough is the smart grass. For more information, visit lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
We're going to stay in America for the moment. Final event of the regular season for LIV Golf in the Chicago area at Bolingbrook Golf Club. Public golf course designed by Arthur Hills, and one that came in for a fair bit of mocking and jest, I suppose, when it was announced as a LIV venue, because the images you'll find online aren't exactly of what you'd expect for a top flight professional golf course. I actually spoke to someone from Chicago over the weekend who's played there and didn't add much, didn't suggest much about the golf course that was going to make it a highlight of the week. But LIV are fortunate in terms of this is their final individual event of the season, and there's some genuine intrigue in terms of the action that will take away. It's just the venue for where they're doing it. Sure, we'd like it to be on a place where you could watch the golf course and get excited about it, but it's not really needed. So the sort of season-long individual race is important because next event is the team championship. So there's also things to play towards for that. So basically, Jon Rahm or Joaquin Niemann will be the individual champion of the year. It's going to be one of them. And it's more Niemann's than it is Rahm's, but if one of them wins the tournament, it's a fair chance they'll take out the season-long deal. So it's kind of what you want when you're running a year-long tour. Rahm's numbers, when you look at them, are actually quite remarkable in terms of he just doesn't miss the top 10 when he plays this stuff. He won recently at JCB. Niemann had the great start to the year, so that'll be worth watching. And then Rahm's Legion 13 and the Crushers, which is Bryson DeChambeau's team, they've already got buys for the first round of the team finale in a little while. So there's Ripper, Smash, and Torque, or Torquay, all can earn a first-round bye at the team championship if they were to come third after this week. So there's a bit at play. For people who are right into it, they'll be across it. For the teams, they'll care. It's building that little bit of engagement with the teams. The teams have grown definitely a little bit this year. Ripper GC's done a really good job, the Australian team, with their social media engagement, everything like that. So I'm sure there'll be a bit more interest. And then there's the relegation drop zone where they'll decide if players are coming or going. So you've got Scott Vincent, Brandon Grace, Bubba Watson. He's a captain, so I think he's
safe, isn't he? I think that's
safe.
Guaranteed. Yep.
Kale Samuja, Kieran Vincent, and the wildcard players, Hudson Swafford and Anthony Kim, are all in that area. There's a couple other players who are around there. A number of them are captains, so they'll likely hang on. But it genuinely means something to Scott Vincent, Brandon Grace, Kieran Vincent. It means something to those guys. So it'll be an interesting thing to keep a little ticker on the side of the screen that people will pay attention to and add a little element.
It's the downside of this. The PGA Tour has the same problem with the FedEx Cup. It's the downside of this year-long kind of idea and whatnot. It starts to get confusing towards the end because all of the scenarios, and if you're not really into it, you just kind of tune out. And you just sort of, but they'll have 3 days of sort of interesting golf. On the course, Jimmy, in some ways, isn't it good that we're finally seeing a top-tier tour going to courses that are somewhat more like what you and I might. I don't think they've done it deliberately. They'd much rather be playing at, one of the premier venues in the US, I'm sure. But there's nothing wrong with seeing our pros go at a Muni, is there? It's not quite that, but that would be a fascinating experience. I've always wondered how Adam Scott would go around Mangrove Mountain, you know what I mean? Because it'd be a confronting golf for them. They're not used to that kind of thing. They're used to the perfect lies and all of that sort of stuff. It'd be amazing to watch. So, that'll be interesting. If the course is not everything that you might expect, that'll make the golf more interesting. So
I agree. I think it's interesting. It adds an element, and if there's not perfect lies at every corner, that's interesting for these guys, and it switches on a different part of the brain. So.
Well, it brings the better players to the top too. The Rahms, the Koepkas, and those guys look at a bad lie and figure out a way to do it. Other players look at a bad lie and go, woe is me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A tip we will get, I'm going to go with Jon Rahm because I think actually winning the individual after all the media hype and everything will mean something to him. So he's going to be pretty determined. So I'm going with the top player in the league probably. So pretty simple.
Well, I've got I list my tips by tour, PGA Tour, and who my tip is, and Solheim Cup and who my LIV. I've got LIV, blank.
Okay.
I never know with this, only because I couldn't decide. I agree with you. I think the Rahm's the man. And I think all that speculation a week or two ago about that story that said some top unnamed top player had said he was desperately unhappy. Kind of thing that gets Rahm going. And you're right, being the individual champion, he would expect that at the end of his first year on LIV, he would be the best player. He's just, as you said, he's never out of the top 10. The guy is an unbelievable golfer. So, yeah, and with it all to play for this week, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get it done.
Absolutely. And then we go to who would Logue pick, and he's going to go on this whole big, long likeness comparing Bolingbrook and its public elements to a golf course, and it's going to be confusing. And then down the end of the line, he's just going to drop something in about Australia, Queensland, Wantima Country Club, and he's going to pick Camp Smith.
Outstanding. That is exactly what he would do.
Thank you.
Almost like having him here.
It's exactly, it almost is, but without the nasty.
But that's exactly right.
Exactly. Next in what will be one of the highlights of the week outside of the Solheim Cup, it's the Amgen, I want to say, Irish Open. Some people consider the host venue, Royal County Down in Northern Ireland, the best golf course in the world. We've already spoken about it a little bit. It's got the added element that Rory McIlroy's there. They've known he's coming for a long time this year. It's a really big deal. It's going to be something special, and you've probably got a little bit more about it, Rod.
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, not a huge amount more, because you're absolutely right. The story this week is the golf course. As I said, we were desperate to go and play some golf in Northern Ireland when we did our big trip in 97. Couldn't get up there. And that was the one that I was really disappointed about not seeing. So I've never played Royal County Down. Everyone I've spoken to who has played there always says, yeah, it's not a stretch to say it's the best golf course in the world. Lots of people who really know what they're talking about think it's the best golf course in the world. So we're going to get a real opportunity to see something special. And if you want to look at contrast, grab yourself a still shot of the Robert Trent Jones Golf Club in Virginia.
Yeah.
Grab yourself a still shot of Royal County Down. You can see what a diverse game golf is. Look, I'll be honest, this is my kind of golf. I love links golf, and watching players play links golf, and Royal County Down, I'll be glued to this week to see how the course plays. That will be the most interesting thing. There's a bunch of blind holes at Royal County Down. Look, if you want to know a bit about Royal County Down, if you're interested, just Google it. You'll find a million reviews and some beautifully poetic writing about what an extraordinary golf course it is. And let's not go through holes by holes, but what you will find this week is a number of blind holes, and professional golfers do not like that. So this is going to be a real test of character, I think, for the field. To a player, they'll be unhappy about having to hit, I think there's 4 or 5 completely blind shots at Royal County Down. So it's going to be a real test of patience. Now, look, Rory stands out in this field. That's obvious. He's clearly by far and away the best player in the field, and he should win, and everybody else will think he should win. Doesn't mean that he will. But that's what will be the difference. If you can control your temper and your emotions this week, I think you'll be in with a chance, because the golf itself is quite democratic. It's hard to separate at links golf with just sort of physical ability. It's a much more. You watch Tiger at Hoylake in 06, and he was just so in control physically, but it was more emotionally. It was like nothing bothered him and all those. That's what you're going to be seeing this week. So look, I think it'll be really interesting golf. The course will be the star of the show. With Rory on hand, the crowds are going to be out of control, particularly in Northern Ireland. If I'm not mistaken, it's pretty rare for the Irish Open to go to Northern Ireland.
Absolutely.
It's normally
in the Republic. So
everything about this has got special written all over it. In some ways, it's a real shame that it's on the same week as the Solheim Cup, because it's going to be very draining, devoting the energy to both. But I think this will be a really, 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 really good week. If you're into golf, doesn't really matter what happens with the play and how good it is or what the scores are. I think just being able to see the course and see how the players go about it, for me, that's going to be the highlight. So most people would pick Rory, and to be honest with you, I'd be tempted to pick Rory. But, as I said, I like to cheer for the story. I'm going to go with his protege, let's call him, Tom McKibben. I think it'll be a huge week for Tom McKibben, playing at home in Northern Ireland. He's a member at Rory's old club. You know, they both went to the same golf club. And with Rory in the field, who must be just an extraordinary hero to him, I think potentially really good week. And I think that'd be a fabulous story. But who's going to win? Who knows? I'm going to say Tom McKibben gets it done.
I'm going to say Shane Lowry, because
Here's my other one.
Why not?
Yeah.
Let's be contrarian and let's do it all. And then that means that we're open to say Logue would just go, well, Rory, obviously.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're right in his wheelhouse without even meaning to be. So finally, we go into this sort of little bit strange period of PGA Tour golf post-playoffs, since they've now ditched the wraparound schedule. So this isn't no longer the start of the season. It's the end of a season where it's all about status for next year, and the players that miss the bigger stuff trying to get their ranking points and make a bit of money and do all that sort of thing. And it starts with the Procore Championship that used to be the Fortinet Championship, but remains at Silverado Resort in Napa, California. What do Procore do? Well,
Great
it's
question.
clearly a question that not only you and I have, because when you Google Procore, those little Google questions come up with, what do Procore do?
Right. And to Google answers or just questions?
Well, it comes up with an answer, but once you hear it, I think you're going to agree with me that it's not really an answer that informs you. So whether it's an answer, I don't know, because they say Procore is the only real software platform in the construction industry that creates a central collaboration hub for owners, general contractors, specialty contractors, and other project collaborators across the entire project lifecycle.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
So it's a workflow management.
I was going to say, do you
system.
know what? That would actually be probably an extremely lucrative business because managing a building project is a staggering job. So
Correct.
Good luck to them.
So good on Procore.
Well done,
And it
Procore.
sounds kind of cool.
It does sound kind of cool. You always wonder about this stuff. Who makes the decision within Procore that we're going to invest? What's it cost you to sponsor a PGA Tour event? 6 million, 8 million, something like that. It's got to be a minimum 8 million
like
spent.
Yeah.
Who at Procore says, "Do you know what would be a good fit for us? Golf." Who says that? I don't know.
Probably the guy who owns Procore and probably has a house at Silverado.
Well, this is the thing. That's generally where the connections lie. And of course, the real value for the sponsor isn't in the television stuff is big, but it's the networking and the opportunity to entertain cousins. You'd love to know what these guys get out of it at the back end. I've often thought there'd be a great series in talking to those who organise those sponsorship packages about what it is
the
they're trying to do.
business of golf. And,
That's exactly right. So yes, we might do it. But I'll be yes, Procore. Go Procore. I'll look into that if I ever decide to build a house. Yeah.
Exactly. Beyond the sponsor, North Course of Silverado is sort of pretty familiar now. A bit of Johnny Miller inspiration, given he lives there or lived there and had an ownership in the resort at one stage.
I think it went a bit nasty at one stage.
It went a bit, it went a bit ordinary. Then there was wildfires in the sort of region. It's sort of Napa, California, so wine country. So it's a pretty familiar sort of a joint. It's pretty flat. It's fairly short for these guys at 7,100 yards. If Logue was here, he'd probably give us a Sahali measurement.
I was going to say, what's the Sahali?
I haven't fully bought into the Sahalis, but it's kind of basically based off history. If you're not 14 under par or better, you're not in with a chance of winning.
Right.
So you need to make some birdies. And there's a pretty varied sort of a winners list here. You've got younger guys coming through who win here, and then older veterans manage to get away and get a win. It's pretty democratic, but the field this year is, you look at it just glancing through and there's not huge amounts to get excited about, but there is some positives. Sahith Theegala defends his title. Wyndham Clark, obviously major champions there. Max Homer too. Max Homer's won this twice. So obviously he's got a connection. He goes back. And I think probably one of the first times he can genuinely be called a headliner, and Minwoo Lee is there. So Minwoo got a captain's pick from Mike Weir for the President's Cup that's coming up. He'll prepare for that, and he's going to go and play this. And this is the kind of place where you'd expect Minwoo to actually make a bit of noise. He hasn't had the best year, so it's kind of a golf course and a vibe that kind of suits Minwoo. So he's definitely one of the headliners. He's joined by Aaron Badley, and on a sponsor's exemption and first time playing the PGA Tour, Jeffrey Guan.
Oh, really?
So
well done, Jeff.
Highly touted former amateur from Australia, from Sydney, who's been playing the Challenge Tour in Europe, and he gets a start here. So good luck to him this week. And we need to get a winner. So my winner is Max Homer, because he's won it twice. He's President's Cup. He's got all that sort of stuff. There's elements there that make me think he's just going to come out and have a good week. And Max strikes as the kind of guy as well who'll have certain events where he plays really, really well for his career. And this is it.
A week in wine country seems to suit Max. A lot of the players really like this tournament because of where it is, not so much the course, the venue or anything else, but it's beautiful countryside around that wine country in California. He seems to be one of those. Look, I was going to go with Max Homer for all of the reasons you suggest. Then I realised they all made sense. So I had to rule him out immediately. I'm actually going to go with the defending champion, Sahith Theegala, because the man called a penalty on himself at enormous expense, and the golf gods should pay him back for that in some way. Oh, that was one of the – I always like those stories. You don't want to see them every week, but I like it, those stories. It really is something that separates golf so much, that the players calling penalties on themselves and those things. It really is a difference about golf. So anyone who does it, I'm always behind. So Sahith Theegala, the universe will look after you, my friend, for doing the right thing.
Yeah, nice. And for the final who would Logue pick, he's a Wyndham Clark man. Always has been.
Yeah, always has been. Right from before Wyndham Clark was Wyndham Clark.
Before Wyndham Clark knew he was Wyndham Clark.
Yeah, that's exactly
Logue
right.
knew he was a Wyndham Clark man.
Logue
that's
anointed
right.
him.
So, yeah.
What was the one that he, what was
That's
it?
right.
The Quicken Loans or the Rocket Mortgage? It was a complete left field pick
Quicken
out
Loans,
of nowhere. And he, bang, next thing, Wyndham Clark's the best player in the world for about 6 months. So, yeah, good on you, Logue.
Yeah, exactly. That will just about do us for episode 80. And Rod, you've been immense in Logue's absence, but do you think he'll appreciate what you've done for him?
No, he never does. Never has.
Neither
never
do I.
will. No.
Now, and I hope this has been enlightening for the people who are listening about the real person that he is. That, you know.
Yeah, well, look, he needs to be exposed. He's built this persona that you and I know that it's not right. So, look, yeah, I think this is the beginning of that. He's not back next week either, is he? So there'll be more.
No, he's not back next week. We might have someone jump into the chair, but he's not back next week. So even more.
That might have been a tactical error, Adrian. We'll see.
Yes, indeed. In any case, he and the listeners can follow along to all this action and so much more on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au, which is also the location of our sibling podcast, The Thing About Golf, which I'm guessing must be approaching a new episode, Rod.
It is indeed. In fact, there'll be a new episode out tomorrow with, funnily enough, we were talking about earlier, Richard Gillis, who's a sports business. He runs a sports business podcast network and newsletter and Substack, and he's a fantastic and really interesting guy. And he's always had an interesting golf. I never realised he really actually genuinely loves the game. He's a lifelong golfer. So I had to chat to him about sport and business and media. The thing I didn't ask him, which I just realised as I was doing it, what is in it for sponsors of golf tournaments? Is obvious question, and I didn't, but it was a great chat. Richard is a really good listen. Ignore me, listen to Richard, and follow his stuff. He is fantastic. And I don't know whether you've seen it, Jimmy. They do a breakout podcast now from their unofficial partner called Wedge Issues, and it's a golf-specific podcast. They've had some really interesting guests. They had Rick Shields on the last episode. Not my cup of tea, generally, YouTube golf and that kind of thing. It was a really interesting interview to hear Rick Shields' thoughts on golf. And there's been a bit of that in the landscape lately. So, yeah. Some people will be bored with all of that. No. I always find that interesting, and Rich was terrific on any and all topics that he spoke about.
Nice. Give it a listen, The Thing About Golf, and we will be back next week on Playing from the Tips.